Today's episode is brought to you by Cloisonne, one of the world's fastest growing network marketing companies. With our life-changing products and our revolutionary Try It For Free, It's On Me campaign, we are changing how people make money from home. So if you're interested in helping people improve their health and their wealth by giving away products for free, then visit cloisonne.com. That's CLOIXONNE.com. Cloisonne's easy as 1, 2, 3 system is helping the average everyday person earn a significant income just by showing others how to give away life-changing products for free. So visit cloisonne.com. That's CLOIXONNE.com. Start changing your own health and your own wealth today. All right, well, my name is Michael Alden, and we are here in Blue Vase Studios, and this is the Alden Report. Again, folks, I always talk about how excited I am to be able to talk to interesting people, to talk to people that are changing the world, to talk to authors, business people, entrepreneurs, people from all walks of life. And for me, it's just such a gift. And I'm really, really excited for my next guest. His name is Chris Ullman. He is an interesting guy. He's a 4-time international whistling champion. He's the head of communications at the Carlyle Group. I'm going to talk to him a little bit about what the Carlyle Group does, but I think they're pretty important. And he's got a great book out called Find Your Whistle. Simple gifts touch hearts and change lives. It's a really, really interesting story, even kind of how we met. I'm really, really excited to have him. Chris, thanks for being my guest.
Mike, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you and your listeners.
So, tell us a little bit about your background. So, first of all, you're kind of in the world for what I would maybe, I guess, call like high finance, I think. Tell us about that world and how you got involved in that world first, and we're going to get into your book and the whistling. Your life is just fascinating. But how'd you get involved in the whole finance world, if that's the right way to describe it?
Yeah, well, I work at a place called the Carlyle Group, and we're we call ourselves a global alternative asset manager, which is fancy talk for we buy things, we make them better, and we sell them. And I do the corporate communications for the firm, and we're a global firm, and we invest money on behalf of wealthy individuals and institutional investors such as pension funds and corporate pensions and the like. And I've been at Carlyle for just about 16 years, and when I started, there was no communications function. It was literally just total greenfield. And over time, we've built a wonderful team, and we focus on the media relations, the corporate brand, internal communications, communicating with our investors, social media, and my bosses are all billionaires, so I get to help them with their personal philanthropy, getting the word out about interesting things they're doing. So I'm as blessed as can be. This is an amazing job. My career-wise, I've been in D.C. for 30 years and worked in the White House. I worked on Capitol Hill and worked in the for-profit, the non-profit sectors, and I've just had a very wonderful career and still going strong.
That's great. So I love DC. I interned for a congressman in the Rayburn building for a little while, and it's such a great area. There's so much stuff going on. Even we see what's going on in the news, but the city itself is just, I mean, the energy is just amazing. I loved being there when I was there. I did mostly constituent work, so not a lot of legislative stuff. But when I was there and had an opportunity, it's just awesome. So I'm political science major and an attorney by trade. So you kind of have to love DC.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you had that opportunity. Same here. I worked for a congressman. I was the spokesman for 3 years or so, and it was so exciting. And this was back in the mid-'90s for me when Republicans ran Congress, but Clinton ran the White House, and they actually had to work together to get things done. So it was a good time to be in Washington. These days there's a lot more anger, hatred, and divisiveness, which is why I'm so focused on my book and trying to get the message out about love and joy and people making the world a better place.
Well, let's get into it. So you wrote this book called Find Your Whistle, and you are a 4-time international whistling champion, which I think you joked about on your TEDx talk that people are like, well, and you're also in the Whistling Hall of Fame, and you joked and said, well, yeah, you don't know what that is to the crowd. I thought that was I love the your humor. How did you begin to write this book? Why'd you write the book? And tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned my TEDx talk, and so back in 2013, I had the chance to do a TEDx talk, and what was really interesting about it is the organizer of the event kind of was drawn to the notion that I'm a champion whistler, so he presented the opportunity to do one, but then I thought, well, what would I say? Now, of course, I do communications for a living, so I spend a lot of time focused on what is the message and what is the intent and what is the hoped-for outcome. So I literally spent 6 months trying to ponder why would anyone care that I am a whistling champion. And then what I kind of concluded was that I've had this array of experiences over the past 30 years where I've whistled in the Oval Office for the President, and I've whistled for handicapped children, one of whom whistles but can't speak. And I whistle Happy Birthday more than 400 times a year for people. And so I knew I had great stories, but what I was looking for is a thread going through them. And during that 6-month preparation, I concluded that I was able to touch people's hearts and even change some lives using this simple gift, because I am not a hero. I'm a whistler. And no one would ever mistake whistling for heroism. And that's okay, because not all of us can be heroes. But everyone has something simple inside them that they can share with other people. So I gave my talk and had a great, great time. And I had a pianist with me. I had a violinist who did dueling banjos with me. And so that was just tons of fun, and was a way to make the message more interesting for the audience. And then the book flowed from that.
Okay.
Where after I finished this talk, I had all these great stories. I had this theme, and I said, wow, I should write a book about this. And so then over the next 4 years, I wrote the book and found a publisher, and so my book just came out in June of 2017, and now I'm in the marketing mode and just trying to get the word out. And ultimately I'm trying to empower people so that they better realize what they are capable of. And I think we have a hero-centric culture, and we love our heroes, and sports heroes and political heroes and all sorts of people who've done amazing things, climb Mount Everest blind, and those are all great things. And I would never take anything away from them. But you don't have to be a hero to touch a heart. And I want people to realize that what they are capable of, and that you don't have to do a heroic thing. You can do a simple thing and still make a difference.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned the heroes thing. I find that, especially within the world of celebrity or within the world of professional athletes, and we put these humans on a pedestal and hold them up as if they are a deity, and 9 times out of 10 they remind us that they are in fact human, and they let us down. I think too many of us are looking for heroes that just they shouldn't be. And I think it was Charles Barkley that said something like, "I'm not a role model," right? I think people didn't like what he had to say, mm-hmm. But you're right. We can all be our own heroes within ourselves.
Yes, and but adding to that, what I'm trying to do is get people to think outside of themselves. So I think for me, I have this talent. Yes, I can whistle well, and I've whistled with symphonies, and I'm one of the best whistlers in the world. But the point is that what am I going to do with it? If I just whistle to make myself happy, that is not going to make an impact on the world. But if I can use this gift to reach out and touch a heart, that's really powerful. And here's one little example. As I noted, I whistle Happy Birthday hundreds of times a year, and I've gotten to be friendly with this senior citizen who's now in her late 80s, and I've been whistling for her for almost 10 years now on her birthday. And a couple of years ago, I called her up, and it was probably around 3 in the afternoon. Her name's Jean, so I got Jean on the phone, and I whistled for her, and then we chatted for a few minutes, and she said to me, "You're the first person I talked to today."
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, so it's 3 in the afternoon, and no one has called to wish her a happy birthday. No one has come to visit her. And hopefully other people did later in the day, but here I was able to take my simple little gift and touch her heart in this little way. I'm not curing cancer, so I don't claim it's some big thing, but for a few moments I was able to tell her that she was important, and then that gives me joy too, because being able to share my gift makes me happy. And when I whistle happy birthday for people, I routinely hear, "You made my day." And what a gift that is to me. And so, of course, I'm doing it for them, but it brings me joy as well to know that I have the capability to reach out and touch someone, and that spurs me on to do it even more. Because why limit myself? If I can continue to do good for a larger group of people, by whistling happy birthday, for example, then that's what I should be doing. So I've kind of turned it into a ministry, believe it or not.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you, I really, appreciate what you're saying, and I think, our listeners need to understand that as well. It's those little things, those small moments, the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You said you're not curing cancer, but to me I know you're trying to be humble, but when you do call somebody on their birthday and you whistle for them, and like you said, if she hasn't talked to anybody up until you, the impact that it has on her is immeasurable, meaning that after you hang up that phone, you may not know that you had an impact on her day that made her feel great, and then she went on to do great things herself. And I think a lot of people need to really appreciate not only what you're saying, but the theme is those small things truly can have a global impact, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of the things I do in the book is to feature other people whose simple gifts touched my heart.
Right.
And the goal is to entertain people. So I've got all these great, funny, poignant stories in the book, and then I want people scratching their head saying, what's my whistle? What is my simple gift? So to try to give readers a better idea, I feature 10 people whose simple gifts have made an impact in my life. And those people run the gamut, from my mother, and her simple gift is empathy, to a young lady who makes a homemade Christmas card for my family every year and has made it for 20 years. Very simple, but it's my favorite card. I look forward to it every year. And to a priest who runs a homeless shelter and his whistle is love, to a man who makes carrot cake for me once a year, usually on New Year's, because he knows I love it, and he doesn't have to do that.
Big fan of carrot cake over here. Love carrot cake.
Yeah. Oh, well, then you would love this. This is the best carrot cake the world has ever known. And so your listeners might be saying, well, it's a Christmas card, so what? Or it's a carrot cake, so what? But that's really the point.
Right.
Is that it's so simple, and it's just him giving, or her giving of him or herself in this loving way to brighten my day. And then, hopefully, I'm paying it forward. And so that's what the kind of empowering part of the book is all about, is getting people to realize how powerful they are as individuals. And I think a lot of people forget that they are capable of changing a life. You don't have to wait for someone else to do it. You can do it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to ask you a question in a second, but folks, if you're listening right now, we are on with Chris Ullman. You can find him at chrisullman.com. It's ChrisUllman.com. You can find his book, Find Your Whistle. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You could just Google him. And by the way, take a look at his TEDx talk also on YouTube. I just watched it before we got on today. It's pretty awesome. I mean, his background, we haven't even talked about it yet, but I mean, he's serenaded the president. He's been on The Tonight Show. He's lived an amazing life. And what he's talking about, what is your whistle? It's not necessarily about his talent of being a 4-time, international whistling champion. It's about what's within you that can help others. It's a great book. It's very, very inspiring. Again, go to Amazon, or you can also just go to chrisullman.com. Chris, so I think I know the answer to this question just from what we were just talking about before, but I do like to, for my own crutch, I guess, to have a list of questions I like to ask people. Well, this one's kind of my favorite. That's why it's the first one. Mm-hmm. Success. As it now, you have a very successful career with the Carlyle Group as the head of communications, and that's a big deal in and of itself. But your career as a whistler, I know it dates back all the way to when you were 5 years old. But how do you define success within that world of becoming a champion whistler?
Well, first, if you take a 30,000-foot look at success, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this because I have 3 children now, and they're 15, 14, and 11. And my wife and I talk to them a lot about making the most of their gifts. And so to me, their success to a great extent is an absolute. It's what am I capable of doing? Unfortunately, our society generally measures success relative. Is how successful are you relative to that person? And I am not discounting that. That's kind of life, is that if you have the Indy 500, someone's going to win it, and someone's going to come in second. So, yes, success is relative in that case. But when my kids get a report card, I say to them, did you do the best you could do? So is that B, the best you are capable of? And if they say yes, then I'm not going to be upset. If they say no, then I will say that's a missed opportunity, and we need to help you be all you can be. So ultimately, I think true success, especially if you're looking at it, from an existential or even a religious standpoint, is really about maximizing the gifts God has given each one of us individually. And it's up to us to do something with those gifts and make the most of them. Now, so of course, the relative aspect of success, as I said, is just part of life. So I got to be a champion whistler. Won the championship 4 times because pretty much all of the standard things that you have to do to be good at anything. You have to work really hard. You have to really want it. You have to be creative, innovative, and I've done those things. And so, like in the innovative area, for example, I've developed some kind of funky whistling techniques that almost no one else can do. So, a big part of the way I live my life is trying to figure out how do you differentiate oneself in the marketplace. So here's an example. So most whistlers whistle with their lips. So you pucker your lips and the air goes through it, and there's your whistle. But I can whistle with my tongue. So you say, all right, so what? And I say, well, I can do these things where I can make a referee whistle sound. And the way I do that is by going literally brrr, like it's cold,
right,
plus the tongue whistle. You put the two together, and you make a whole new sound. So what does this have to do with whistling and innovation? Well, what I'm able to do is take this so-called referee whistle and use it as an embellishment to make my whistling more interesting and dynamic, and helps me interpret pieces better. So that's a way to differentiate. And so that's been a big part of how I've approached my art of whistling is, how do I develop new techniques to innovate? Another thing, and this gets into the hard work category, in 1996, so it's a mere 21 years ago, I did a Graceland pilgrimage. So I spent a week driving throughout Tennessee to go visit and commune with Elvis. and I whistled for 5 or 6 hours every day for a week in my car, alone, of course, because no one could tolerate that much whistling. Heck, I could barely tolerate that much whistling. But the goal was to perfect the songs that I had been working on just over and over and over and over again. And if for any of your listeners who've ever read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, the 10,000 hour rule.
You stole my question, man.
Over and over again. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You can tell we didn't rehearse. And it's just over and over and over again. It's the tedious part about becoming great at something, whether you're crocheting or whether you're a writer or a poet, or whether you're a doctor trying to do the best stitches possible. It's just over and over and over and over again. And I'm actually along those lines. I've always been fascinated by people who say to me, "Hey, do you practice?" I'm like, I always look at them kind of cross-eyed, and I'm like, "How could I be good if I didn't practice?" And sure, practice all the time, hours at a time, and thankfully I like to practice because if I didn't like it, it would just I wouldn't do it. And here's another interesting and fun example is that why I've achieved as a whistler is that I'm very good at arranging music for the lip. So I'm going to do the National Anthem tomorrow. So obviously this will be after this. Your podcast will air after this.
Right.
So I've done the National Anthem a bunch of times at major league sporting events, baseball games, basketball games, and the like. But I decided I wanted to do a different arrangement of it from the way I arranged it in the past. So I spent the past couple of weeks kind of thinking through, how do I take this song that everyone knows and make it mine, but now make it mine in a different way than I made it mine in the past. So I've come up with kind of somewhat of a jazzy version that I'm just super excited about, and I'm hoping the baseball fans will like it. But that process of arranging the song to fit my instrument, using my little doodad embellishments, it's a fun process to go through. So I'm very excited about the process of doing it, and then of learning it, and hopeful that people will like it.
Yeah, that's great. So, I'm glad we're talking a little bit about success. And I think you're right. I mean, Outliers. Malcolm Gladwell did such an amazing job. I read his book, and I don't think I'd written my books yet, and I was like, man, this guy he's just so talented. But there's another book called The Talent Code that was actually written before Outliers, and his name is Dan Coyle. And one of the things that he talks about is the ignition moment in someone's life. So all that hard work, all that stuff you're doing right now, there's a reason why. Was there a point in your life that you said, man, this is what I want to do? I want to put in those hours, because Michael Phelps, and you hear about all these athletes and things like that. When all these professional athletes, for the most part, they're doing it because they love it. You're spending 6 hours in the car, day after day, hour after hour, year after year, because you love it. But was there a point in your life that you can recall where you said, you walked into a room? I know I think you said your dad might have whistled before, but was there something that really hit it home for you?
There was. So I grew up listening to classical music, and eventually got into jazz, blues, jam band, Grateful Dead stuff kind of later in high school. But all my early listening was classical. And so I got to know Mozart's Oboe Concerto. And so it's a fairly complex piece. It's around 21 minutes long. And so it's orchestra with oboe. And so I started just whistling the oboe part. And I came to master it. And then one day I was on a bike ride, and I just said to myself, it just literally popped in my head, I don't know why. I said, why don't I whistle this with a real live orchestra? And it just seems so utterly outrageous to have a whistler and an orchestra, especially with a traditional classical piece by Mozart. But I said, why not? So I made a demo tape of me whistling kind of along with a recording of it. And then I drafted a letter, trying to establish my credentials, and then send it to 50 orchestras, mostly in the kind of the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. So you've got like Maryland and North Carolina, Virginia area. And sure enough, 3 of them said yes. And so then, of course, I was scared because be careful what you wish for.
Right.
So now I actually had to make sure I knew every note. So then I launched into this intense period of preparation where I actually went and got the score and made sure I knew every single note. And eventually I did my performances. I got on stage and it was just me and the orchestra. And at that point I realized, especially because the audience reaction was so positive, that this has potential. And then, as with a lot of things in life, it's what do you choose to do with your gift, or what do you choose to do with opportunity? And so over time, over the past almost 25 years, I've just looked for opportunities to whistle whenever I could. And I've had these just fascinating experiences where I get a very binary reaction. So, for example, I met the conductor of the National Symphony Orchestra one time, and a friend of mine who was with me said, "Oh, you got to hear him whistle. He's great." And the conductor kind of looks at me and says, "Whistle." I said, "Okay." So I whistle a song, and then she says, "Wait here." And then she goes 10 feet over, talks to some guy, comes back and says, "How would you like to perform with the National Symphony Orchestra in front of 60,000 people at the U.S. Capitol in 1 month?" And I was like, let me check my schedule. Yes. So she got it. So she was one side of the binary reaction. Then I was at a car wash a few years later, and it was one of these high school car washes. And I went up to the person. I said, "Well, what's the cause?" And they said, "Oh, it's for the T.C. Williams High School Orchestra." And T.C. Williams is a high school in Alexandria, Virginia, where I live. And I said, "Well, is the conductor here?" And they said, "Yeah, she's right over there." So I went up to her and I introduced myself and I said, "I'm a champion whistler. I have whistled with 10 symphony orchestras." And I tried to present it in a way that whistling with her orchestra was the next logical step. And her reaction was goose egg, nothing. She was like, "Oh." So it's totally binary how people react to it. So some of your listeners may be saying, "This guy is way too freaky, and it's just beyond my comfort zone." And other people are going, "This is different. This is fun." And I can't predict how people are going to react. And whistling is whimsical on one hand, but I take it seriously. But I don't take myself too seriously because it's whimsical. And I try to strike a balance of being professional and making sure I have a top level of quality, but still being joyous and fun with it.
Yeah, I really like your demeanor. Again, I watched your TEDx talk, and it's really funny. Again, I would recommend it to anybody. Again, we're on with Chris Ullman. If you'd like some more information about Chris Ullman, you can just go to his website. It's Chris and then ULLMAN.com. His book is called Find Your Whistle: Simple Gifts Touch Hearts and Change Lives. It's his story about kind of the things that he's gone throughout his life. But really, what we're talking about here is what's your whistle? What talent do you have to offer the world that can change lives? And I think that's really kind of the point of the book. But Chris, when we talk about the whistling and and again, I love your humor. It's great. But you really are at the pinnacle. You're at the top of the top in the world in what you do. And so I look at what you do is no different than, again, as we mentioned, Michael Phelps or Tom Brady or any world chess champion. You're doing the same type of stuff just within your field, right? I mean, it's the same level of commitment, and I think that's what I love to drive home with our listeners is whatever it is you're trying to do, whether you want to be a champion whistler or whether you want to be Tom Brady, it's possible, but you got to put in the work, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. And, I mean, as I look across my 30-year career, and I am amazingly blessed, and every day I get on my knees and I thank the Lord for the opportunities that I've had, and the financial benefits, and I'm humbled by it all. And I think but if I try to be really objective about, how did I get here? I think in my profession, I think every profession is different of, how do you get to the top? I mean, yes, you have to work hard. In my profession, communications, especially like public relations, what I have found has really worked for me is two things. One is being an advisor and not a message taker. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people in life, they're good at identifying the problem, and you go to the boss and you say, "We have a problem."
Right.
And then, that's a message taker. An advisor goes to the boss and says, "We have a problem. Here's the situation. Here's the background. Here are the three options. Here's my recommendation. Now let's talk about it." And that latter approach, more the advisory approach, is very much premised on courage, being able to take a stand with the boss and be able to back it up with knowledge and and history and a perspective that comes from experience to a great extent, so that you are not just a message taker for the boss. You are helping the boss make the decision, and the boss comes to rely on you. And it's that process, as I've worked through my career. The older you get, the more experience you have, the braver you are, and the more committed you are to being an advisor, the more effective you become over time. And it becomes a real positive feedback loop. I have found that the more they trust you and the more your advice proves to be valuable, the more they will trust you, and then you become integral to the process rather than peripheral to the process. So that's been, I think, a huge part of it. And then the other part for me has been what I call the heart and the head. And I do a lot of mentoring with college seniors in trying to help them think through their heart and their head. So heart is what do you want to do, and head is what are you able to do. And you can picture like a Venn diagram and where these two overlap with each other, and then you find careers and jobs and that where the heart and the head come into sync with each other. Now, thankfully, I'm a fairly existential thinker, so I spend a lot of time pondering what am I good at, where do I add the most value, and what makes my heart sing. And so I've worked hard throughout my career to get those to match up with each other. And that's what really enables me to have skill and passion in sync with each other. Because as readers know, that if you are doing a job that you like, but you're really not good at, it's not going to work. And vice versa, that something you're really good at, but you really don't like, it's not going to work too well in the long term either. And because I've been able to get my heart and my head in sync with each other and match that up with really good jobs, that just, the enthusiasm and the competence are like rocket fuel in a career.
Yeah, when a lot of times people aren't fortunate enough to really to be obviously where you're at, and a lot of times people just go throughout their life and they never able to find that that balance that you're talking about. But then when I think about you and I talked, I have a list of questions and the listeners usually know, and you just talked about being an advisor, not a message taker. I looked at my one question I always ask: what advice would you give young people to grow in the workforce? And I think that message answers that question, but it also gets you to the place you want to be, because if you become more valuable to the people around you by offering some sort of, like you said, advice or trying to provide a solution rather than just identifying the problem, because anybody can do that, that to me is just such sound advice for any career, right?
Totally. There's one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately, and there's a lot of emphasis in our society these days on diversity, and And I'm all for diversity, more women, more minorities in senior positions, and in careers that are underrepresented by women and minorities. And I think that's great. But what I think really should be focused on, regardless of your gender, regardless of your race, regardless of your ethnicity, is, are you brave? Are you courageous? Because when you're sitting in a meeting with a whole bunch of people, especially if there are people more senior than you, and kind of the tide is going in one direction, but in your gut and in your head you say, I'm really not happy about that. I think we should go in that direction. It takes courage to be able to raise your hand and say, what about this instead of that? And that is the kind of diversity that I think is what we need to push more than all of them combined, because you need brave people who will stop the boss from doing stupid things, or stop an organization from adopting a herd mentality where, because the tide has turned, then everyone just goes in that direction before you've thoroughly explored all the options. And it's bravery and courage that get people and put them in a position to question, not in an obnoxious way, but in a thoughtful, fact-based, logical way that you present, an alternative. And it's amazing. I mean, when that famous play, 12 Good Men, I think it was called 12 Angry Men, which is the one about the jury. I think it was 12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men, yeah.
Yeah, where, remember, 11 of them were going in one direction, and then one of them said, I'm not sure about that, and then eventually brought the other 11 over. And that was courage. Didn't have anything to do with gender, didn't have anything to do with race or ethnicity. It had to do with courage. And that is the biggest piece of advice I give to young folks these days, is be courageous. Of course, you can't do it willy-nilly. You have to have your facts. You have to be logical. You have to be respectful. But that is really the kind of diversity that I think is what will help someone stand out in their career, but more importantly, make a bigger difference kind of day-to-day in your job and your organization.
Yeah, and I love that advice. As someone who's sitting in the corner office in my company, and at one point I've had almost 200 employees, and my top level executives have been with me since day one. And if you surround yourself, and I've seen it happen to people, you can surround yourself with yes men and women, and they're going to make you feel good about the decisions. But if you want to be successful, whether you're the CEO or whether you're a middle-level manager, or whether you're not, your personal life, you can't surround yourself with just yes men and women, because you're not gonna break through. You're gonna make bad decisions, and if people are afraid to give you that advice, things are gonna fall apart. But what I really love about what you're saying, though, not even from the CEO level, because I fully appreciate that, is that the advice that you're giving to others who maybe aren't even at that level yet, that are trying to get to that level, is provide solutions. Like you said, lay it out. Try and be as objective as you can. Maybe give some alternative, like you said, some alternative paths people can go down, rather than watching somebody make a bad decision. In Outliers, we talked about Outliers, right? And that story in Outliers where Korean Airlines. You remember that story in Korean Airlines with the? Oh, totally.
I mean, if your readers, if your viewers have not read this book, you must. And you should read it while you're in a plane. It will freak you out.
But that's kind of what it is, right? It's like, hey, let's have a talk, but it's great stuff. So we don't have a lot of time left, but folks, if you're listening right now and you want to find a book that's gonna, it's gonna tell you some awesome stories, but it's also gonna really kind of put in perspective truly the little things in life. And I appreciate that with my book 5% More, but I love Chris's story. I love his commitment, and I love what he's doing. So if you want some more information about Chris, you can just go to chrisullman.com. It's CHRISULLMAN.com. You can also find Your Whistle on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. You can just Google it. I also recommend that you go to YouTube and watch his TEDx. It's really, it makes me smile thinking about it, because it's just he tells a great story, and it's not just a lecture, so to speak. Now, Chris, I wasn't sure I was going to do this. Well, I kind of was. Now, you had mentioned that this podcast is going to air after you're going to do the National Anthem. You have a somewhat unique twist on it. Would you be willing to close out the show with that version of the National Anthem, knowing that it won't air until after?
I would be delighted.
All right, here we go. I can't wait. I'm excited. Chris Ullman, everybody.
Play ball.
Wow, that was amazing. Again, folks, if you want some more information about Chris Ullman, you got to visit his website. It's chrisullman.com. You can find his book, Find Your Whistle, at Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. Google it. Obviously, his talent is been on display here, but his story and what he's talking about and how your inner talent and your whistle can have an impact, like we'd mentioned earlier, not only on an individual but truly on a global basis. It's a great book. He's obviously a great guy doing some great things. So go ahead and check it out. Again, my name is Michael Alden. This has been the Alden Report, and we'll see you soon. The preceding episode was brought to you by Cloisonne, one of the world's fastest growing network marketing companies. With our life-changing products and our revolutionary Try It For Free, It's On Me campaign, we are changing how people make money from home. So if you're interested in helping people improve their health and their wealth by giving away products for free, then visit cloisonne.com. That's CLOIXONNE.com. Cloisonne's easy as 1, 2, 3 system is helping the average everyday person earn a significant income just by showing others how to give away life-changing products for free. So visit cloisonne.com. That's CLOIXONNE.com. Start changing your own health and your own wealth today.